I get introduced to rapid transformational therapy, and it's like this light bulb goes on in my head. You have been approaching this from an allopathic approach. You are approaching this from a body perspective, but people are not just a body. People are mind, body, and spirit, and you're leaving that out.
Are you struggling with low energy, weight gain, hormonal imbalances, or heavy metal and mold toxicity? Do you want to learn more about anti-aging tips and creating more longevity in your life? Well, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Jen Heller, a wellness educator, infrared sauna expert, and home health consultant. In this podcast, Homes That Heal, I will teach you how to transform your home into a health and wellness sanctuary. Your health is your wealth, and I believe that your home should be your sanctuary space, loaded with the tools you need to thrive in your life, not just survive. If you want to feel fantastic and transform your life and home, grab a pen, let's dive in and create a home that heals. Hey friends, Jen here. Welcome back to Homes That Heal. While I'm away this week, I wanted to bring back one of my favorite and most powerful episodes, one that speaks to so many people and often carries long-term debilitating stress. Today's show is with the brilliant and wildly gifted Carey Weiss, and all about healing childhood trauma, a childhood trauma that I suffered with for nearly 40 years. So Carey is an expert in rapid transformation therapy, otherwise known as RTT. And last year, I trusted in her to legit hypnotize me so I could go within and work through my lifelong struggles with weight and childhood obesity. This was honestly one of the most vulnerable, life-changing experiences I think I've ever done, actually. This is for anyone who feels stuck or has something that you feel is holding you back from a true breakthrough. This is also one of the most listened to shows to date. So I really wanted to share it again with you because I think it's a very important and powerful message. Carey is not only a master at her craft, but she is one of the most loving and compassionate souls I know. She also does Akasha readings. I know that that's not mentioned in this show, but Akashic readings are also a very powerful way to connect with the divine and connect with your guides. And I've also been working with her on those since last year. And we'll probably do an entire show just on that at some point. But again, that's just a really powerful way to connect and go within. So many people have sent me emails and text messages since last year, sharing their experiences, what has come up for them, and things that they have encountered working with her and have mentioned it's literally changed their life. So I couldn't agree more, which is why I wanted to revisit this conversation and remind you, if this is resonating with you, consider this your nudge from the universe. Thanks again for tuning in, my friends. I hope you enjoy the show. Let's go. All right, friends, welcome back to another episode of Homes That Heal. My friend Carey is here today, and we are going to talk all things rapid transformation therapy, as well as just get to know Carey a little bit more. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. Anytime we can sit down and talk about this stuff, I love it.
I know. Aren't you so excited? As I do with all shows, we always chat beforehand, of course. And so we've been chatting and talking about everything under the sun. And and so today I'm like, okay, I got to hit record. We need to get moving with this conversation. And it's going to be an interesting one today because we're not only going to highlight Carey and her work and what she does and her amazing gifted talent, but also talk a little bit about my experience with her gifts and talents through a hypnosis session that I did. And it's going to be a little two-part, so to speak. We're going to talk about my experience a little bit later in the show. But first, I want to just highlight you, obviously, your beautiful energy. Talk to me a little bit. What are you up to? And tell me what rapid transformation therapy is.
Rapid transformational therapy is this incredible blended modality. It was created by Marissa Peer. It's this modality that combines cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistic programming, psychotherapy, as well as hypnotherapy all together to really access what the root cause of people's issues are and help them transform. Because like when you're in hypnosis, you're able to enter this network of intelligence where your mind influences your body and you influence your mind. So let's break it down. We have our conscious mind and we have our subconscious mind. So our conscious mind is our thinking mind. It's the part of us that's like, oh yeah, I need to pay that bill. And what should we have for dinner? And like engaging in conversation like this. But our conscious mind only is active about 5% of the time. And it really only has a fraction of what our subconscious is. So our subconscious is kind of like a video camera that is always on record. And this video camera starts recording in our lives around the time of the third trimester while we're still inside our mothers and then continues through our life. And it is recording every single detail of our life. So just right now, it would be recording what's going on between us, but it's also recording all the details around us, the sounds, the feelings, the thoughts. It's all there, but it's just kind of too much for the conscious mind to process. But it's still something that lives inside of us. And so as we come into the world, living inside of our mothers, we start experiencing the world through our mother. And then we're born and we start experiencing the world through our own experiences. But the problem is that the experiences that we have in our life, depending on the people that we grow up around, our influences, our situation, it's not necessarily authentic to who we are. So if we're around people who don't treat us with respect, who teach us different values than what is truly authentic to us, we start to believe that that is what's actually true, not what we think about ourselves. And especially in the realm of like the first 7 years, you're really living in hypnosis. You're really just downloading all of this information. So, depending on your upbringing, that could either be a really wonderful set of information to live by, or it might not be. And, the thing with children is that children need to have a couple of things in place. They need to feel significant. They need to feel loved. They need to feel that they matter. They need to be celebrated and they need to know that their parents are proud of them. And when children don't receive that, because they're dependent on their parents for survival or whomever is caring for them, they can't see that it's the parents or the caregivers. They see that it must be something inherently wrong in themselves. And usually it's that I am not enough and that I don't matter, that they're different. And then in addition, if they're learning that they don't matter, their needs also don't matter
Mm.
and they start to give up their own needs. So we've developed these beliefs and then we start living our lives by these beliefs because our subconscious mind is running the show 95% of the time, and that's not necessarily authentic. So as adults, we end up recreating patterns in our life. So, like for me, I found rapid transformational therapy. I started in the wellness space about 25 years ago. I was a massage therapist. And I did that while I was putting myself through school the first time around. I was always super interested in health. So I started working as a health educator and I was working for universities and public and private health center sector. But I really couldn't do what I wanted to do without a nursing degree. But I didn't grow up believing that I was smart enough to be able to go for a nursing degree. So after a couple of detours, I eventually went back to school for nursing and I fell in love with hospice. My mom was actually a childbirth educator growing up. So I spent a lot of time in that realm and like learning about health. And so I naturally thought I was going to be drawn to bringing life into the world. And I thought that's where I was going to end up. But it was fascinating to find out on a hospice rotation that bringing life into the world and helping to usher life out is very, very similar. There's just this incredible veil that falls over both of them. And I just fell in love with it. So, working as a hospice nurse, this was probably the most enlightening time in my life because I got to see just some of the most incredible and beautiful things. Hospice work, a lot of people think is very sad, but hospice gives the people the opportunity to be able to start processing their feelings and their emotions and taking care of the things that they want to before their time on this earth is done. And so it's really beautiful work. So I got to do crisis care. I got to be in people's homes as their case manager. And then I also got to work on the admissions team. And what is interesting working on the admissions team is that it's your job to go in and help our doctors determine if that person is going to have 6 months of life estimated or not.
Right.
And so I had access to everybody's health histories. And after seeing hundreds of patients, it turns out that our health histories are pretty much the same for each diagnosis across the board, like 95% of the time. So if somebody's coming in for cardiovascular disease, that's why they're admitted to hospice. I can pretty much guarantee you that they're having some blood glucose regulation issues. They might be diabetic or pre-diabetic. And they're probably also on omeprazole or pantoprazole, one of those acid suppressing medications, having maybe some early dementia symptoms, things like that. Like like medications, symptoms, comorbidities, all running same. And this is like case after case after case. Cancer patients were different. That was a whole nother thing. But I was like, well, wow, like if we can see this pattern, like why aren't we doing something about this? Like it was really wild to me. And then at the same time, I was having patients that were like, hey, I need to make it to my daughter's wedding. She's getting married in 4 months. I want to walk her down the aisle. What can I do to make sure that I can show up, that I have the energy to walk, that I feel good? Like, what can I do? And I would start to talk to them about their health and about, moving their body, doing what they can there, about cutting out sugar and dairy and personalizing this for them, but giving them tips on helping their energy, helping their body, and not feeding the cancer. And to my surprise, I was informed that I'm not allowed to do that.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, what's the story behind that? Like, why do I help? Why wouldn't you want me to help patients that are asking for that information? And they're like, well, it's twofold. One, the other nurses that come after you, they don't know the information. And the second part is that this is not taught in medical school. I'm like, wait, okay, so even if it's not taught in medical school, which is a travesty, do you not know that sugar is bad for you? That your body has to compensate every time you put sugar in your mouth and that cancer feeds on sugar? Do you not know that? And she's like, I do, but you can't talk about it.
You but that's interesting, right? That's always interesting.
Yes. So I'm kind of hitting this crossroads where I'm like, wow, like this is not aligning with my energy anymore. Yes, I want to help these these patients of mine, but I'm being told that I can't do that. At the same time, I'm also in my own health crisis. I'm having a lot of digestive issues, like, and I'm dealing with hives and I'm dealing with miscarriages and
Mm.
there's so many things. And I'm a relatively thin person, but I'm carrying a belly on me that makes me look like I'm 5 to 6 months pregnant. People are actually asking me like each week. So, like, when are you due? I'm like,
Oh my gosh. I remember talking about this a little bit at the center one time. You're like, Jen, what can I do to get rid of this belly? And I think you were wearing something that I didn't notice it until you showed me. And yeah, you are, and you were then a relatively fit person. Otherwise, I was surprised.
yeah. I mean,
I'm just saying, like, transparently speaking, you hit it well, but obviously it was something you were dealing with. And I remember talking about what the infrared can do and kind of pull out the toxicity out of the fat cells and the inflammation, get our bodies into a harmonious state. And so, yeah, I remember that conversation with you actually. That was a pain point for you.
yes, yeah, and it was like, if you think about, like, how many people are asking me if I'm pregnant, imagine how many people think I'm pregnant and not say anything to me, and just like, "Wait, when is she gonna have this baby?" So, but then, the fact that I'm a nurse, right? And I've been in the holistic realm for a while, so I'm making sure, like, I've got a super clean diet, and I'm doing a sauna, I'm exercising, I'm making sure, like, I am doing the right things, I'm going to acupuncture, like, I'm doing all the things that I can think to do to help heal my body, but I'm not getting the results that I want. Fast forward a few years, I end up in a new situation. I end up getting a divorce and my life opens up. There's no coincidences in life, right? Things happen when they're meant to happen. And
Indeed.
I get introduced to rapid transformational therapy. And it's like this light bulb goes on in my head. It's like, okay, Carey, you have been approaching this from an allopathic approach. You are approaching this from a body perspective, but people are not just a body. People are mind, body, and spirit, and you're leaving that out. And so I did a deep dive into how the mind works, and I end up experiencing rapid transformational therapy for the first time. And it is like this key that has been unlocked. And I'm like, so I dive in, I go to school, and it changes my life. And so rapid transformational therapy in my own life has been just this incredible godsend of being able to address things in my past. And along with that, there's been some other tools that I have been able to utilize because of this experience to help healing my gut. But what I got to learn is that, again, we talked about the network of intelligence that your mind influences your body and you influence your mind. So my subconscious programming growing up as a child, my parents are very nice people. I didn't have like a horrific growing up or anything like that, but my father was not somebody that was, I mean, he has some narcissistic tendencies and was not particularly attached to me. My being born was kind of a threat to him receiving the things that he wanted and needed in life because now my mother was giving them to me instead of him.
Mm.
And so he put up a barrier. And growing up as a child, like I didn't feel particularly loved by him. I didn't get very much attention. I ended up having two brothers that came after me. And so I was sharing the attention that I did have. And, for a girl, I mean, what
Yeah.
the role of a father plays in your life.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to now with rapid transformational therapy, I'm going back and I'm able to start accessing like what is my subconscious programming, the programming that's telling me that I'm not enough. So, for example, I get out of my marriage and eventually get back into the dating world. I go on this date and this guy is awesome. He's amazing. It's the very, very end of the date. And I like end up bolting it out of there. And I go home and I'm having panic attacks. I can't sleep. I'm nauseous. Like it is terrible. My body is like, girl, this is not okay. And it starts picking out all the things I didn't like about him. And I'm like, what's
Oh gosh.
on? Right? I call my mom and I'm like, I'm telling her about this. And she's like, okay, he sounds amazing and he's super cute. Like, this has got to be a you thing. So
Gotta be you.
like, all comes back. So I called my girlfriend and I was like, okay. So she's like, okay, let's do a session. Let's find out what it is. It goes back to my belief that relationships are not safe. So in rapid transformational therapy, we use hypnosis to access the subconscious mind. And it's almost like a ability to time travel. So you go to what we call scenes, and sometimes it comes up almost like a memory, but a memory with distinct detail. And sometimes it's a feeling or an experience that starts to create a picture or create an understanding. So in one of mine, I go back, I'm inside of my mother. My mother, she grew up in an abusive household. She was never hit, but there was abuse happening around her. And so there's that natural fear and flight mechanism that is built into her, that her body is wired and fired for protection and for safety. And so if somebody elevates their voice, this is a key sign for her. Nope, got to get out, got to get safe. And so I'm inside of her and I can hear that there is a voice that is elevated and I can feel her body chemistry shift and say, nope. And so I know that the person on the outside that's raising his voice is my father. My mother now floods her body with stress hormones. I can feel it. I can feel her heart beating. I can hear the sound of it. And she goes hot. How some people, when they get upset, their body flushes hot. So
Yeah.
her body flushes hot. And now I'm really uncomfortable. So it's interesting because when I get upset, my body flushes cold.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And so I got to have the understanding. I'm like, oh, well, that's why I get so cold when I get so upset. Like I start to shiver almost.
Like your body's trying to cool itself down. Is that
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Because that was one of my first early experiences.
A reflex of she's
Yeah.
hot, so you need to cool down. You need to
Yeah.
her body. Whoa, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt you because I want you to keep going, but this thought is coming to my head right now. How we feel, like from a generational standpoint, on our mother's side, it's like as upwards of 7 different generations. Like we feel that in our genetics and in our
Mhm.
DNA, like through our mothers and our mothers' mothers, because we're in womb, right? And
Mhm.
so it's 7 years, 7 generations, isn't it?
I think so. But on that note, though, I mean, if we really think about it, just from being like, so I was originally carried in my grandmother because when a girl is born, we are born with all the eggs we'll ever have. And so when my mom, yeah, was being carried in utero, I was one of her eggs already in utero. So originally, I originated in my mother. Like I was carried originally by my grandmother, but
Okay.
yeah, epigenetic line. I think you're right. It's 7 generations, but I'm not 100% sure.
Maybe that's what we were talking about was I think maybe you had mentioned that to me before about the eggs being in utero, but maybe I mentioned that to somebody else and someone else was like, yeah, it's 7 generations of us. Like when you're working through generational trauma, you
Mhm.
basically need to go back up to 7 or can go back up to 7 generations because especially if there's abuse or trauma or something significant, because of the way we feel, exactly what you're talking about, the way that we feel the body respond when we're in our mothers. And so,
Mhm.
okay. Sorry
Yeah.
for my tangent. Carry on.
No, no, but that speaks to epigenetics and
Yeah, it's just
and it's
fascinating to me.
energy.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because it's interesting when people are like, we're trying to heal and compartmentalize like us and our physical bodies, but we really need to look down the line upwards of our generation. Like, what did our mothers experience? What did our mothers' experience? And what's
Yeah.
interesting, and we'll talk about this a little bit more about my experience in a bit, is what I am finding and running up against is that I don't know a lot about my great grandparents and beyond because everybody that I'm asking in my family doesn't know. Like it wasn't talked about. And so what's interesting is I can only go back about 2 generations and then it's like the information stops. And obviously they've passed, but even talking with my mom, she's telling me, she's like, I don't actually know a lot about my grandma or my great grandma or anything because they just didn't talk about feelings, emotions, trauma, experiences. It was a simpler time or a simpler life, but you just didn't know what was going on in their lives outside of surface level stuff. And so,
Yeah.
me, I'm like, I want to go down this rabbit hole of figuring this trail out from a couple hundred years ago. And I kind of hit a wall because no one's talking about it. Nobody knows. That's just interesting to me. So carry on.
Yeah, life was just so much more about survival back then too, and just
Yeah.
getting by. So a lot of us are very strongly wired and fired for survival. Like, even simply like somebody that's having a problem making decisions. Well, it could be something that happened in this lifetime, but it could also be something that's coming from intergeneration. Because if you think about, if you are living out on a prairie a couple hundred years ago where you're homesteaded and you have to make a decision, that decision could either result in you having crops that is going to sustain you through winter, or now you don't have enough food. Like, decisions were life and death. Like,
Right.
this is not a small thing. And so yes, our bodies are strongly wired and fired for
Yeah.
survival.
It
And so
wasn't it wasn't deciding, should I plug my phone in tonight or turn it off of
oh, that's a different time. So
okay.
yeah, so I'm in utero and I can feel my mother starting to just flood with stress hormones. She's getting hot, I'm getting cold to try to compensate the temperature difference. And what I'm learning is that, oh my gosh, this is my father speaking to my mother. My mother's body is responding in a way that's like, this is not safe. This is not safe. I know this pattern. I've heard this before. This is not safe. And so before I even come, I'm not even born yet. And I've already learned that she's in a relationship with this person and she does not feel safe. And I also know that I'm about to be born out into a world where I'm going to be dependent on a person that is not necessarily safe for me.
Whoa.
Yes.
That's
And
a
so then
revelation.
we go to, there's different scenes that keep coming through and formatting that, like most kids, I think in the 80s were probably spanked and things like that. And that wasn't anything different for me. But like my father was not an affectionate person with me. And so when I was being like touched, it was probably to be hit. And so my body has learned like, hey, relationships are not safe. So you've gotten out of your marriage. I'm not going to let you get into another relationship that is going to create you to not be safe. So I'm going to do what I need to do to keep you safe, which means that whenever you get around this person, I'm going to flood you with stress hormones. I'm going to make you feel nauseous. I'm going to pick out what you don't like about the person. And so there's like the subconscious program that's running the show. And then there's the conscious program. But wait, like all of these characteristics that I was looking for in a partner, he's exhibiting. So
Yeah.
in using rapid transformational therapy for me, like I'm able to look at, oh, no wonder I had that experience. Yes, that makes complete sense that these things are interwoven to create my belief system that relationships are not safe. And because I have this inherent belief, even if it's not authentic, even if it's not part of my conscious mind, my subconscious is aware of it. And so what happens is I have a belief, which then creates the thought, then creates a cascade of proteins, hormones, right? Which then leads us to an emotion, and that's a feeling, and that feeling then cements our own belief. And so we end up in these patterns and these recreated cycles. So rapid transformational therapy can be used for a whole range of issues where you're experiencing blocks in your life. So with my nursing background, I tend to use it when it comes to health blocks. So whether that's in the realm of weight loss or it's illness like fibromyalgia, cancer, the body doesn't do things for no reason. Okay. The body has reasons that reason knows nothing of, but it is doing it for certain reasons. Your conscious mind, however, might not know why that's happening. And it's usually designed to protect, to prioritize, or to punish. I don't see punish a whole lot. I have, but it's usually to prioritize or to protect. So rapid transformational therapy can be used for, helping somebody to uncover what the root is within the health realm, but it can also be things for like money blocks. It can be for relationships. It can be for helping people that, maybe want to be better speakers or want to get beyond the belief that, oh, I couldn't be an entrepreneur because of XYZ. It's any of these limiting beliefs that are inauthentic to you that we're able to go back, basically unravel. And then with the beautiful aspect of neuroplasticity. We're actually able to rewrite the program in our brain over the course of 21 days, which it takes 21 days to create a new habit. And so we use hypnosis and you actually listen to a hypnotic tract in order to rewrite the patterns that are in your brain. So that's
Yes.
a very long story.
Yeah.
Here
I
to
love it though.
RTT is.
No, this is exactly it. And again, we were trying to figure out how we could tie this bow up. So for me, I've said to you a million times, full disclosure for everyone listening, I did this in and around my issues around weight. And I don't say weight loss, it's weight release. I was very curious. I've been doing a ton of work. Obviously, people know that I lost a significant amount of weight about 15 years ago. And I've continued to maintain and be on this journey. But something came up for me, I would say maybe last year where I started really just peeling back the layers on my own health. Something came up for me last year that I just kept feeling like I want to know why. Like, what is it in and around my relationship with food? Because I was starting to feel, and I'm totally like, I eat what I call primal living, a more carnivore style diet. For me, it's been very helpful to repair and restore from the stroke and the paralysis and the muscle atrophy and just feeling better and having lean muscle and great skin and all the things that's just what works well for me. And Mark and I've been eating and living that way for a long time. But something about my relationship with food, like my issue is often that I don't eat enough and I don't take enough time to eat enough. Whereas 20 years ago, I was overeating and stuffing myself with garbage, right? And then also then eating at the end of the day in the evenings, like really self-sabotaging. I could eat salads all day and then I was like, oh, I should probably eat ice cream tonight because I've been good today. So that's total self-sabotage. And I've worked through that a million times over. And that's in the rearview mirror far behind. But fast forward, I would say, since I got into a more healthy realm, what I have found, and sometimes I catch myself because I'm working too much or I get involved in a project or something and I just forget to eat. So I'm not eating enough. So last year, I'm like, man, what the hell is wrong with me that I can't sometimes prioritize food? Like, I know I teach people food is fuel, right? Like, I know that. But I'm like, what is going on in my brain? And so logically, I'm like, this isn't really a problem for me because I can just eat and I'm fine and I'm healthy. For me, I'm like, no, I need to peel back these layers and understand because I don't A, want this to become a problem, but B, I also know that not eating enough and not fueling your body isn't healthy. Like I could run and I do fasting and my body's conditioned for fasting. So it's not really a shock, but it's more so I really wanted to understand my relationship with food and why I was feeling like I don't need to eat. And so that's why, when you and I connected or whatever, and I learned about what you're doing, I was like, ooh, what topic do I want to go down? Like, what do I want to dig into? And for me, it was just to continue the weight journey of like understanding how I can maintain a healthy relationship with my body, mind, and soul, but also my food and get a better understanding of it. And so, anything you want to say about that before we tell it?
I do. So we're talking about like the power of the mind and how the mind influences the body, right? So you made the point. It's not weight loss, it's release. That's actually a really big topic to cover because if you think about the word loss, I lost my home, I lost my baby, I lost my mind. Loss is a bad thing. Our body is wired and fired not to move us towards pain. It wants to move us towards something that is going to be good. Our body wants to protect us, right? And so if we are wiring our body to say, oh, I want to lose weight, well, loss is negative. Our body is not going to help us lose something that belongs to us. We want to make sure that when we're dialoguing with our mind, when we're dialoguing with our body, that we're using the right words because, again, we want to tie our language, tie our body to the things that we do want to experience, not the things we don't. So, weight release is and that's actually what my program is actually called Release. So, thank you,
Oh,
Jo.
is it? Oh, teed that up for you. Well, you're welcome. I heard that years ago. I don't remember exactly where I heard it. The supplement and the weight loss industry, that's a bazillion-dollar industry. We all know that. But if
Mhm,
you think about it, they market it as weight loss. And so,
mhm.
again, going back to the dialogue and what you're telling yourself, I remember feeling like, well, I'm not losing anything. And I sure as hell don't want to refind it. So, you know what I mean? Because people yo-yo, you lose, you gain, you lose, you gain. And that's been the issue over the years for a lot of people is like, you can let it go or you can lose it. But oftentimes when you get vulnerable and you get yourself in a state of stress or whatever, like, yeah, you find that weight. And a lot of times you find more in some
Yeah.
people's case. And so it was interesting to me. Somebody used the term, actually, no, I think it was a book I read, and they used the term release. You're releasing it and you're letting go, bless and release. Like that's been the way that I treat people, things that no longer serve me in a positive way. I like to just say bless and release because that feels better to me in general is bless and release. So for me, it's like bless and release this weight. I'm not pretending it wasn't there. I have all sorts of before photos that remind me of that's who I was. But when I look at them now and like I remember living in that chapter of my life, but there's literally nothing about my life then that I've carried forward. Like I've shed it all. I've released everything. I mean, there might be a couple of pair of shoes that I've had for 15 years. I mean, maybe, probably not. But just in general, I've released almost every aspect of my life, my home, my husband, that job, like all the things really I let go. And so I don't like the term weight loss. And I think that that's important distinction for people who want to manage a healthy life. I don't even really stand on the scale anymore. I think I shared that with you. Like it's a measure of gravity. I go mind my clothes and how I feel naked basically in my own skin. And that's different for everybody. I mean, you can do metrics. I do body fat percentage in certain ways that I measure things, but I've just lost the obsession of being a certain number. I just don't care. I'd rather be able to fit into my jeans and my swimsuit and be like, fuck yeah, let's go. This feels good. You know what I mean? Like the number on the scale, unless you're physically trying to get to something for a specific reason, but if you can't maintain it and manage it, what's the point? So sorry, I got on my little soapbox there. But weight has been something for the vast majority of my life. I was overweight. And so just to bring this back in is so my session with you was in and around weight. And I wanted to understand what is it about my life? Like, how did I spend 30 years or about 28 years overweight, chunky, short and stout, whatever people want to call it? I mean, I was in obesity category. Like, let's not, sugarcoat it and now for the last 15 years, I've maintained a healthier weight. So that's interesting to me. And so something you said 15, 20 minutes ago about what rapid transformation therapy does is it brings you into a scene almost.
Mhm.
And so for me, I had three very specific scenes.
You did.
Again, I'm going to try to articulate this into words the best that I can because we did this on a Friday afternoon about a month or so ago, maybe 2 months. But it took me 2, maybe 3 days to actually be able to put into words to mark what I experienced in my session with you. Nothing I've ever done, and I have done a lot of things over the years. I experiment, I try anything because I'm curious and I'm interested in how the body works, how the mind works. So you know me, I go to conferences and shows. I go to Sedona for a week by myself and do all sorts of soul work. I fly all over the world really to do my own soul's work so that I can not only help transform my journey, but also bring information to other people. I can 110% tell you and everybody nothing I've ever experienced was what I experienced under RTT. That afternoon was life-changing for me. And again, I should say, like, I'm kind of a control freak. It was just curious and interesting, like, how much of this is in my control? Because I feel like I'm a pretty powerful person in
Yeah.
general. So you feel like you can put both hands on the wheel and you're laughing because you're like, yeah, you had me under hypnosis in like 30 seconds. I was out. But or you had me where I needed to be in REM within a minute or 2. Like, I responded very quickly, and I think because I was ready and I was open and I was like, "Let's do this."
Exactly.
So,
You
yeah,
chose it.
I totally chose it, and this hypnosis is something that I've been kicking around as an option for years. Again, not just from an experimental standpoint, but just from an understanding standpoint. No joke, obviously, people know I was paralyzed for a long time. I've suffered some health situations where I've gone inward on a lot of things to try to get some understanding as to why my body has done and responded in ways that it has. And so hypnosis was something where I needed to decide that I was going to surrender, fully surrender, but also be open to allowing you. And obviously, I know you and I trust you 100% to guide me through this process.
And you bring up a good point, Jen. Like For those of you who have not actually had the experience of hypnosis, people are pretty familiar with like stage hypnosis where they got people barking like dogs and falling in love with brooms, which I did that on stage before. But so I want to point out that as your guide in hypnosis, I cannot make you do anything that you don't want to do. You will not share information with me that you are not comfortable sharing. You remain in control at all times. It is your choice to allow me to be your guide, is how that works. So even people who have issues with control, if you choose to say, "Yes, I want to have this experience," then you will allow yourself to have the experience. So thank
Yeah.
you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I think, again, I mean, who do you trust to surrender fully and say things that you're not sure you're going to say, right? Because it might be embarrassing or it's just a vulnerable state you have to be willing to go into. And I remember that morning and that day being really excited, feeling like I trust you 100%. I know no matter what comes up or what I say, it's for my best and highest good. And you hold that space for me because we love each other as friends. Like that was important to me. And so being able to experience something like this with somebody you trust, that looks differently for everybody. For some, it might be somebody they know really well and they have to feel comfortable, or you need to do it with somebody you don't know at all so that you can fully let go. And so that's kind of the dance, right? Of like, like I mentioned, I went out to Sedona for one of my solo trips and I spent some time doing some work with somebody I'd never met before. And I wanted to do it that way because I wanted to be completely open with somebody who'd never met me before. And that was an interesting experience in a good way. So for this, I was like, I know you well enough to know that even though we know each other, there isn't anything I need to hide because I know that you're going to guide me through what's in my best interest. And so I think that's important for people to understand or think through if they want to have a transformational experience and they want to actually go inward and do work like this, finding somebody they trust and can be completely open is really, really important. Because again, this is hard for me to put into words, but really what we uncovered or what came through for me was a lot in and around my grandma, which was my mom's mom. And the way that I'll kind of frame and tee this up is that I'm pretty open about my childhood. I had a good childhood. My brother and I were very blessed. My parents were good to us. We lived next door to my grandparents for much of our life. They spoiled the hell out of us. Like we lived a good life. We lived in the country. We had friends. We had everything we needed. We had food. We were regular middle class people growing up in the 80s and 90s. And looking back at my childhood as a kid, I felt really safe and good in my mind. So when we started to dig into this in and around the weight and stuff started coming up around my grandma, she helped raise us. This was really interesting. And so it brought me to a couple of different scenes where my grandma said some pretty unnice things to me. And so again, what I was trying to figure out is why I carried so much weight and why I was overweight and why I thought I needed to stay fat and chubby or whatever. In the first scene I remember that came up was when I was 4 years old. I can still see it in my head right now. Here's the interesting thing though. This scene that I'm about to describe was not something that I remembered prior to my hypnosis session with you. So this was a new scene and a new experience for me. But I could tell you I was 4. I was in my grandma's living room. I could tell you what I was wearing. I could tell you what my grandma was wearing. I could see it in my mind. I can see everything. You walked me through it, but I proceeded to tell you the interaction basically between my grandma and I and the things that she was saying, and they weren't very nice.
Right. And it's interesting because when I had listened to earlier podcasts, I would listen into some of your phrasing about having to have thick skin. I have thick skin. And, you use the phrase short and stout just a little bit ago. And that was the programming. That was stuff that your grandmother told you. And when you heard that, it trained a belief into you. And those words, again, what our mind believes, our body believes, and these new belief systems that have been given to you by somebody else then trained you to show up in your body in a certain way.
Right. In my adulthood, I don't remember or thinking to myself, my grandma was verbally abusive to me as a child. Therefore, I know that's why I've had weight issues. That is not a revelation that I've ever had. However, one of the things that myself and everybody in my family knows is we have always known that my grandma was not a very nice person sometimes. It's something that I don't want to say we laughed about, but it was kind of like, oh, Grandma Ruth is just X, Y, and Z. She's not very nice. She's kind of ornery or she has these multiple personalities. Like, it's been talked about. We've talked about it our entire lives, but not in like a traumatic way. And I'm not going to speak for anyone else in my family, of course. My mom and my aunts and uncles, they all have their own experiences, and we've certainly talked about them. I've shared this experience with my family prior to the show, actually. So there's no surprises when they're listening to this. But it's really interesting how we kind of were just okay with the way grandma was our whole lives and the way she spoke. But I didn't realize until our session that it actually deeply impacted me, like deeply impacted me. And quite frankly, scene 2 and 3 that popped up, scene 2 brings me to a time when I was 7 at a water park on vacation that my grandparents took us. And some more things were said to me about me being in a swimsuit and not being about my physical appearance. And like, I can see that in my mind now. Again,
Mhm.
that was not a scene or an experience or a memory that I remembered prior to our session. Like, it came up and I remember articulating it to you. And so this is just interesting what the subconscious wants to say. And the best way I can describe it is my mouth was talking and the words were coming out, but I had no control, if you will, over what was being said. It was just very fluidly spitting out words, and you were graciously guiding me through. I remember you asking me questions like, "Oh, what are you wearing?" And you were serving up these questions to me, and I was explaining it, but I couldn't otherwise explain that today if I didn't have that experience because I don't remember it. Like, that was when I was 7.
Mhm. And it's important too, like, some people out there do have the recollection that, like, "Oh, yes, I was told that I was such a big girl, that I was XYZ." So, well, of course that's there, but it's not just the, "Hey, like, you were told this." It's the, "You were told this, and it caused you to start to believe this." So, when you were told that you were short and stocky, like, you started to feel shame inside your body, that something was inherently wrong with you, and if something was wrong with you, then you were not going to be loved. And if you're not going to be loved, then who was going to love you? What was your future going to be like? And when we are different, when we don't have people that are going to show up for us because we're not going to be loved, we want to be loved by someone. We want to be part of a community because, again, our bodies are wired and fired to make sure that we are safe. And if we go back 500 years, we could not be on our own. If you were on your own, you were going to die. So you needed to be part of a tribe. So if your family is fat and you carry extra weight, at least you're part of that tribe. So it's all of these other things that teach you to believe this. And now grandma's telling you, hey, this is just who you are. You're going to have to live with this and you're just going to have to deal with not being loved. You're going to have to deal with people making fun of you. You're just going to have to deal with all of these things. And so then you also learn to believe that I needed to develop thick skin.
Yeah, that's a term I've used my whole life. What sticks out to you in that session? I know you have notes, and I know that you kind of revisited our session a bit this morning too, just to kind of remind, like, what else stuck out to you about my session that would be helpful to share?
One thing that was interesting is, in your third scene, you went to where you were roller skating in her dingy basement and you were all by yourself. And you were thinking, like, I'm cold and I'm alone, but this is where I belong. I need to be by myself because if I'm by myself, I don't have anyone picking on me. I am safe. Then you're also having these realizations that, like, in every scene that you went to, you kept going back to all of these things in my environment are adding up to grandma is right. Grandma is right that I am someone who is short and fat and I am not lovable. I am not enough. And it all just kind of starts to add up. And so, one thing that we do is when we take you through the scenes, you're getting all of this detail. And then I ask you, well, what is it that you learned? The painting of these scenes for you, how do these scenes add up to the situation that you are currently in, where you're having a hard time releasing the weight that you want to let go of? And your information that you garnered from that is that you were supposed to, because you were told to, that you were supposed to stay short and stout. Not only because you were told that, but because that allowed you to be part of the community, that you needed to hide behind your clothes, that grandma was right. In every scene, it kept coming up that grandma was right. You learned that in one of the scenes, you were being picked on, and it was in front of your mother, and your mother didn't step up and didn't protect you. So, in that scene, you were talking about how you didn't feel like you could rely on your parents. But again, we're talking intergenerational stuff, right? your mother was raised by this woman who's picking on you. You didn't think anything was different with your childhood. It's a good childhood, except that you were being bullied by your grandma, but being bullied by your grandma was normal, which was also normal for your mother. And as we learned later, it was also normal for your grandmother. So we're just repeating these normal scenes that are adding up to your body helping you to be part of a community being, well, I don't like to call it fat. I like to call it insulation because for many people, weight or fat is insulation, not only from other people's opinions, but insulation from the world. A lot of times when I'm working with somebody who has been assaulted, that they will put weight on because when you have extra weight, you're not necessarily always seen, you're glossed over. And so if you're not seen, you're not likely to be a victim again. You're not likely to be someone that is going to be attacked and abused again. Way to insulate yourself from people who are going to hurt you.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. I can think of a lot of people over the years that I've had conversations with around weight gain after trauma or abuse or something. And it's almost, they don't want to be seen. They just want to be overlooked, basically.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. That makes
The
sense.
really powerful. Then we also go into something that we call role, function, purpose, and intention. So not only in our life of experience do we have these things that are training us to believe these things about ourselves, but then we also have our body and our own innate intelligence. And again, our body doesn't do things for no reason. Our body has chosen to have this extra weight on us because it's trying to, again, protect, prioritize, or punish. And so for you, your body was talking about how when you have extra weight on you, that you can remain in control, that you get to be in charge, that you're not going to be bullied or pushed around or punished. And that's something when a child does not feel significant, they will sometimes put on extra weight because they felt like they were bullied, they were pushed around when they were small. But now they're not small.
Mm,
No one's going to be able to push them around ever again.
interesting. That's so interesting.
So then another one, again, it kept coming up that having this weight was going to protect you. It was going to give you control, that you were going to not have to be alone because your childhood, there was a lot of isolation in there. And that when you carried extra weight, that you were going to fit into your family, that you were going to have your own tribe around you, that you weren't different from, you were a part of. Even if things were wrong, you were always going to fit into that part of the family. If
Mm.
you held on to the weight, you would always be in the driver's seat. If others criticized you, you had your protective insulation. You had your shield, your thick skin to protect you from what other people were thinking and doing. So yeah, like those were your role, function, purpose, and intention for holding on to this weight. And then what we do is we show up and we say, okay, so this is what your body has been working on. Your body said that you've been working on this since 14. And I asked you what was going on when you were 14. Do you remember what that was?
Don't.
It had something to do with your dad, about how you were being bullied by your dad.
Oh, that would make sense. No surprise. I've talked very candidly about my relationship with my dad over the years, that there was a lot of friction there. And again, that kind of centers around, I don't want to say control, but again, it's probably control. He liked to be in control of things, and I like to be free spirited and not be under control. So as I got into my teenage years, that line in the sand grew. It was almost like I'm going to do my own thing. I remember so many different circumstances where he would tell me I couldn't do something just for the sake of being able to say I couldn't do something. I'd be like, why can't I go with my friends to the movies on a Friday night? Because you said so? Like, that's not a reason. Looking back, I still don't understand the reason. It doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you let me go have fun with my friends? But he would say that I couldn't go. So then I'd go run into my mom and say, like, that doesn't make sense. And she'd be like, you're right. You can go with your friends. It's fine. But we all just kind of knew that my dad liked to be kind of the tyrant, kind of the control factor. And so that escalated when I got into middle school and high school. And so in and around 14, I honestly don't remember what I said to you under our session. So you're free to share, of course. But I know that there was and is a ton of work to be in and around my dad in our relationship because of that tug of war that we've pretty much played that dance for 35 years. I mean, we got it right before he passed, fortunately. I'm grateful for that. But we wasted so many years just trying to see who could keep their hands on the wheel. And that's just the truth. So what did I say? feel free.
And I do want to point out too that it is really, really normal that you don't remember because when you release and let go, your body doesn't hold on to it. It doesn't need to come back to it. It doesn't need to be like, oh, I need to protect myself. I need to do X, Y.
Right.
And so you actually let it go. So the good news that you don't remember coming back to an incident with your dad where your dad was bullying you, he was yelling at you and he was telling you that like no one's going to want you. It's my way or the highway. You need to leave, you need to get out. And inside you were feeling like, wow, grandma's right. Like my dad doesn't love me, no one's going to love me. And you felt like I am getting pushed around here. I'm not getting to make my own choices. I am going to make my own choices and I'm never getting pushed around again. And so in that instance, at that moment when that happened, your body's like, all right, I need to protect Jen from the things that are happening around her. And this is how I'm going to protect her. I'm going to make her significant so that she's never going to get pushed around again.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that actually makes me feel a little emotional. First of all, I know for sure that those were my dad's words because he always said my way or the highway. So if that was coming through 100%, that was conditioning. I heard that a million times throughout my life, which is one of the many reasons when I was fresh out of graduating high school early, I moved out and took the highway because he was always like, my way or the highway. And I was like, well, I have the choice now. I'm out of school. I'm taking the highway. And I remember leaving thinking, you've been telling me this my whole life. Now I'm doing it. Now you're standing in my bedroom going, where are you going? And it's like, I'm going exactly where you told me to go, taking the highway. And I literally did. My new house was down the highway 20 miles. So that's interesting. Something you said too, I want to make sure that I mentioned before I lose the train of thought and our time is done is one of the most compelling and notable pieces of this experience was that I remember again, we did this on a Friday afternoon. It took a few hours. It was around 5 o'clock ish by the time we were done. And Mark and I were supposed to just stay in that night and have dinner and just kind of have our usual Friday night hangout sesh at our home. And I remember when I left, he was home from his office and I came down the stairs. I will not forget the look on his face. He looked at me like he was looking at a different person. And I remember him saying like, "Are you good?" And I remember thinking I didn't feel like the same person. I had what I would consider a complete out of body experience during that time. I remember feeling that several times throughout the session, like I was not in my body, but I remember talking, you obviously so lovingly guided me through it. But at several times during our session, I remember almost looking down on myself and feeling I was out of body, right? So then when you brought me back in body and I walked out of my office, I said, I'm going to go for a walk. And I remember putting my shoes on and I walked around our neighborhood for probably 45 minutes. And I know I've told you this a few times.
Mhm.
I felt lighter, literally physically lighter. Like I had set something down that day and I've not picked it back up. Mark, of course, he's looking at me wide eyed because he knows I do all sorts of random stuff all the time, but this was different. He's like, "Are you good? Like, is everything okay? Like, are you okay?" I'm like, I'm real good. I can't talk about it right now because the words are not there, but I will share. I said, but I'm really, really good. I felt an enormous sense of peace, but also lighter. And so it's interesting, we went into the conversation in and around weight release, right? To like let go of weight, which in everyone, you think of weight being heavy. I definitely let something go that day and it's gone. And so that's why I don't remember some of this stuff because it's like it was experienced and then I've just let it go down the river. But my body has physically not felt the same sense in a good way, in a sense of like lighter, freer, like more peaceful. It's a little challenging to reflect back. Again, we waited a little time to record this today because I'm like, I need to rest. I need to freaking process. I needed to do my 21-day recordings, which I did. I did that to the letter, like morning and afternoon. Oftentimes I did my recordings right before bed. So it was subconsciously in my mind going into sleep. And I remember waking up the next day, the process worked. I remember feeling like something has shifted. And even though I'm in a really healthy lifestyle and routine, I've amped it up since then, actually. Now I'm wearing a weight vest when I go, Mark has a weight vest. I'm like, I think I'm going to put that thing on and challenge myself a little bit more. And I just feel more in charge of my body, leaner, lighter, in so many different ways. And so I know that you probably have some more things we want to talk about, but I needed to say that now because I don't want to forget, for one. And two, when you were talking about letting go and not me remembering, that's what I was walking around my neighborhood thinking is like, I just set a massive suitcase down that I'm never picking back up again, ever. I wasn't like walking like I do, I normally walk and do sprints and I'm like on charge. I was just like out there just moseying along, just just kind of strolling at my own pace, getting regrounded, getting back into my body, but feeling something is released and I'm going to bless it. And this is just interesting information. I'm not, I don't have, I didn't then, and I don't have a negative relationship with my grandma. Obviously, she's passed, but something shifted in me that day and it was tremendous. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for that. Obviously, I've told you a million times, but I'll just say on air, thank you for that because I think that's huge. And again, going back to the whole like, don't stand on the scale. Like, I don't care about the scale. What I care about is how I feel. And I feel lighter. I feel better. I feel more at peace. I feel more in understanding. I feel more in alignment. And I feel more in tune with what happened or the why. It wasn't just that I was stuffing my face with food for many years. It was like, why was I doing that? Why was I choosing to do that? That's just baffling to me. And so, what a tremendous gift this work and you can provide. Another interesting piece that I think was more towards the end of our session was, and I'm sure you probably have the right language for it, is when you actually were asking me as if I was my grandma and my dad. That mind blowing. I can't put that into words. So I'm going to let you speak on that.
Absolutely. After coming to the understanding of how your body, how your subconscious created these beliefs and how this has affected you, then you made the choice to let it go. So you said, I'm going to set down the weight. And you did. And because everything in this world is energy, you had the energetic release of letting it go. I've actually never heard somebody say they have an out of body experience. Everybody experiences this in their own way based on who they are as a person. This is truly personalized medicine. So from here, then, there's lots of different techniques that get to be used inside of rapid transformational therapy. But one of them is the technique that we call dialogue with a herder. Sometimes we can talk to people that have been beneficial in our lives that we need to talk with, that we need to connect with. But in your case, like you did have two primary people that were in your life as a dependent child, your grandmother and your father. And so we can connect with them. So what we do is I have you envision that person, whether they are here or not, it's all energy. I have them stand in front of you. So you're staying within hypnosis, your eyes are closed and you envision them being in front of you. These old memories, these old emotions, these old traumas, they all live inside you almost like as like energetic cords that are running your nervous system. And so when you just unleash it, you can start to kind of cut those cords. So I asked Jen to just say what she needed to grandma. We did grandma first. So just tell grandma what she needs to hear, what you need to let go of. And you did, and I said, don't hold anything back. Just really let her have it. This is not yours to carry anymore. This needs to go back to where it originated. It needs to go back to grandma. Now, I would never do this in the case of abuse, especially like in the realm of sexual abuse. But after you say what you need to say, we want to give grandma the ability to show up. And so I click my fingers, and Jen now looks at things from the perspective of grandma. And so I said, okay, your beautiful granddaughter has just told you what it's like to have been raised by you and how your actions, the things that you said, the way that you treated her affected her and how this has shaped her adult life and the things that she's struggling with. What do you have to say about that? Usually, the loved one shows up and is like, I didn't realize, I'm so sorry, but your grandmother did not do that.
Ooh, I remember this.
You
I
know, remember grandma said?
and you can share what she said, but I remember this vividly of you snapping your fingers and me going into her and what's mind blowing and bending to me. Again, it's hard to articulate, but this is kind of where the out of body thing starts to sink, or is the best way I can describe it, is because again, it wasn't me talking. My mouth was moving and it was my voice, but it was my grandma talking. And that was very interesting to me because I've never experienced anything like that. I remember feeling 100% like that was my grandma speaking.
And it's interesting because as the guide, it isn't quite your voice. You actually changed the way that you look. So your face got thinner and narrower, and your voice showed up differently. So when I switched and I said, okay, now you are grandma. Well, grandma, what do you have to say to Jen? Your face shape change, your voice changes, and you get really stern eyes looking at me. And you said, she deserved it. And I said, oh my, okay. This is letting me know that there's something going on with grandma. So I'm like, okay, help me understand why you believe your 4-year-old granddaughter deserved to be treated the way that she did. And grandma said it was because she was stealing all my attention. And I said, okay, what is it about your life that you feel that you need the attention versus it going to your tiny little granddaughter? And grandma started to talk about how when she was young, she was abused, that she wasn't well loved, that she was not treated well, and that she was essentially repeating patterns. And I said, okay. I said, do you ever wish that in your life experience that someone would have come to your rescue, that someone would have stood up for you, that would have said, hey, you do not get to treat her that way. She does not deserve that. And she said, yes, I wished for that all the time. And I
Mm.
said, okay. So what I did then with grandma is I said, okay, I want you to rewrite your history. And I said, I want you to envision a time where this was occurring. And I want you then to think of somebody that you trusted in your life. And I want you to envision them stepping forward and standing up for you and protecting you and taking you away from the things that were hurting you. So I gave her a moment to do that. And then I said, okay. And I said, how do you feel? She goes, I feel better. I said, okay, now I want you to do it again. And this time, instead of somebody coming in to rescue you, I want you to rescue yourself. I want you to stand up for you. I want you to take your inner knowing and your self belief and understanding what you deserve, how you deserve to be treated. I want you to stand up for yourself. And so I gave her a moment to do that. And I said, how do you feel? And she said, I feel better. I feel different. And I said, now I want you to talk to Jen and I want you to talk to her about what she said to you. And this time she said, I'm so sorry.
Oh, wow. I don't remember all these details. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. She talked about what her pattern, what she had experienced and how she was treated. And she said, I now understand that I was repeating patterns, that I was not given what I needed to be healthy. I didn't do it for your mother. And then I was negatively impacting you. And I said, tell me what you do think of Jen. And she talked about how sweet and funny and intelligent you were, and how, of course, you were drawing the attention. Like you were just magnetic, you were full of life. And I was jealous. I wanted to be seen like that.
Hmm.
So it was just really, really impactful. And then I snapped my fingers and I allowed you then to come forward and to be able to address. I mean, water was just streaming down your
Yeah.
face.
I was gonna say I'm like emotional now because I kind of remember snapping in and out of that. And I remember this is where feeling safe with somebody to be able to let go to this level for the greater good. Like I know I was a mess. Like that's deep. That's pretty powerful work. I remember you snapping your fingers and bringing me out of that and feeling exhausted. For one, a little, I don't remember all the details of her sharing. I do remember her saying, you deserved it though. I do remember those words, but yeah, I don't know. I like I said, I'm still blown away by the process of all of it, but I remember feeling a bit exhausted, but just emotionally drained. And I remember I was crying. I was releasing. I know I had a Kleenex next to me. I was like, nose snap, whatever. So yeah, I guess how did you collect me back?
You're releasing intergenerational trauma. So not only now are you showing up bravely in yourself and being vulnerable to let go of the stuff that you carry, but now you're helping to release the intergenerational trauma that is carried in your cells, but through your mother and your grandmother. And so from here, we went to talk to your dad. And your dad, right away, he showed up and you told him what you needed to tell him. And he was like, you are right. You deserved better. He even made a point to make sure that you told your mother that not only did you deserve better, but she deserved better. His stuff also came from repetitive patterns where he was not treated well and with respect. And he didn't have what he needed to show up in a healthy way. And you got to carry the brunt of that for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I do know a bit more about my dad's childhood, and that's a bit closer than my grandma's. So I do know a little bit more about that and understanding why he was the way he was and the why that he had the belief systems and the personality that he did. And so it's easier for me to understand it, but it still doesn't make it easy to manage or process. I felt oftentimes like I was just a punching bag, not physically. My dad didn't physically abused me. I mean, I definitely got the standard spanking when I sassed my mouth as a child once in a while, but never really feeling like that was, I don't know, I don't want to say a source of power, but I don't remember that a ton as a kid. Oftentimes I'd outrun him.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm not doing that. But it was a little humbling, I think, because I thought my dad would have taken a stronger stance in that. And he certainly didn't. And so that was, I remember that also feeling like, oh, thank God I didn't have the energy for that. You know what I mean? I just I do remember a little bit more of the interaction with my dad, but like I said, I'm a bit emotional thinking about it or taking myself back to it today, but it's taken me some time to process everything. Plus, I wanted to give myself the space and grace for that 21-day period. I think I even listened to it beyond the 21 days, and then I've just listened to it here and there, since just to kind of reaffirm and remind. But by far, probably the most impactful, energetic experiences of my life. And it's powerful work. I can see and feel how this can be beneficial on so many levels. We talked about some different trauma and some things that I experienced as a teenager, the explosion and some other things that have shown up. So I'm going to continue to do this work. But this was definitely an experience I will never, well, I guess I forgot some
Yeah.
of it, but that's why I have you.
I just loved that closing this out with your dad, like you got to not only release the energy, letting go of those ties that bound you, right? And then create these new connections because now instead of having the belief that dad thought that I wasn't lovable, that dad thought that I wasn't deserving, that he didn't want me in his life, we got to find out that dad was really glad that he had you, that you were a blessing in his life. He knows that you deserve better and he wished he would have shown up as a better father to really enjoy you. Like he wishes that he could like rewrite the story and have done that properly, right? So instead of carrying these beliefs that we develop as a small child about how we are not good enough, it turns out that your dad was like, "Look, I was not the one that was good enough here. You always were. And you no longer have to carry that. And you get to start to see yourself as your authentic self, not as what other people trained you to believe." And so after this part, then what we get to do is we get to start working on the transformation. We let go of all of the stuff that is in your words that was weighing you down, let that go and then rewrite it, and we create the so every session comes with a hypnotic transformational recording at the end of it that uses your words to create what you do want, how you do want to feel, how you want to show up in your life, and to continue the release and to change the neural programming of what you used to carry and now no longer do so that you can show up as your authentic self. So yours was one of the most powerful sessions that I've ever done. It was absolutely incredible to see the work and the gift of your vulnerability in order to show up for yourself. But yeah, you mean I was glad that you took the time and that you went out and you grounded and you walked and you did all of these things because this is emotional work and emotional work is energetic work. And like you are doing healing and it doesn't just it like you have to allow it to process out, like ground, take a salt bath, like do these things because you are letting go years and years and years of negative energy and trauma. And this is actually changing all of your systems. So the stomach is the seat of all emotion. And so, as I've seen in the work that I do, when we start releasing emotion, we start releasing trauma and these negative beliefs that we hold in our system, issues like weight and digestive issues, skin issues, a lot of these things just start to release and let go. And that's what I noticed in my own journey. I had a lot of digestive stuff that was going on. And as I started addressing all of these underlying trauma things that I held from my life and repetitive intergenerational trauma patterns, stomach issues started to release. The things that were binding me in this ill body don't bind me anymore,
Yeah.
and allows me to really see myself for who I am and to start recognizing patterns that are like, "Ooh, wait, this doesn't feel good. Well, why doesn't that feel good? Oh," and I get to put that on my list of, "Okay, I'm gonna work on this. I'm going to address this," and you process it out. So, it was amazing the self-care that you did afterwards.
Yeah, it took me a few days. I took that weekend. I intentionally did this on a Friday because, as I mentioned, we're recording this on a Friday because I generally don't do a ton of work. It's usually Gen days or just catch up with certain things. But I chose Friday afternoon knowing that I was going to be done with everything that needed to be done for the week. And then I could slide into the weekend. We didn't really have a whole lot going on that weekend. We were just hanging around the house. And so I scheduled it that way so that I could process, sleep in if I needed to, take the bath. I took 2 baths that weekend. One was a salt bath and another was with some of my favorite bubble bath stuff and some essential oils. I definitely listened to my 432 hertz frequency. I did a sauna that weekend, I know, which I mean is not uncommon, but like I poured in all the tools that I know I've got in my toolbox to support my body, mind, and spirit because when I left, I felt like I was elevating off my chair part of the time. And when I got up and walked out of my office, I felt like I was kind of floating. Like I was like, "Oh, I need to go walk. I need to get outside." I walked, but then I also I was barefoot in our grass and I laid in the grass for, I don't know, but just like reground to like recenter and realign because I felt so different in a good way again, but I needed to like support. I needed to like love my body. I needed to give it the nourishment that I know how to do. And again, Mark is always super patient and loving in the sense like he didn't need me to describe it or explain it. I ended up sharing a bit with him on that Sunday, but I was pretty quiet. Like even that Friday night, we were just hanging around at home and I told him, I was like, listen, if I seem quiet or off, like I'm not, I'm really good actually, but I just don't have the words to speak right now. Like I just want to sit in my body, just enjoy and again give gratitude for my body and for the physical vessel that I have and just kind of support the process. And I felt really good. I remember floating in the bath like I was, water is such a beautiful element anyways, but and I highly recommend a bath after this work because you just feel so weightless, like literally. And that felt really good to just kind of float in the bath and just kind of be there, like, oh, just take that all in and the salt and all the things. So, yeah, I could talk about this forever. Honestly, I've warned people this was going to be a much longer episode than the usual because there's no way we could get this all in. But this is important work. What you're doing is so tremendously gifted. And more, everybody needs to know this type of work exists and people like you. I think one of the messages I voice messaged to you and I was able to articulate my words in a clear way was like, you are so gifted and living in your zone of genius right now. Like, I can't even describe it. Your voice was like commanding in the exact way that it needed to. Like, I feel like this was such a synergistic pot of like deliciousness of all the things that needed to happen, like openness, vulnerability, surrender, and then you swoop in with like all the command and like the energy and the space that and hold the space that needed and like guide me through it. It was just perfect alignment. And so I appreciate you so much. And the process was just tremendous. And I encourage people to consider this. I feel like so many takeaways from it, but probably one of my most favorite was towards the end. You had me sitting in my childhood bedroom on my bed. I remember next to my 3-year-old or 4-year-old self. I can see that in my mind right now. I could see it clearly and vividly and I know exactly what I looked like, what I was wearing, and basically telling my childhood self, like, "I've got you, like, we're good." Yeah, that was powerful. So, emotionally, I feel like when we can look back at our childhood and tell our childhood self that you're loved and supported, even though I said early on in the show, I never in my most adult life felt like I wasn't. It's just interesting how this was buried pretty deep, right? Like I didn't know. Like I just maybe decided that it wasn't impactful or it wasn't impacting my life. I just made the decision early on in my childhood that I was okay. But being able to tell my childhood self that we can walk this path together and we're good. Powerful stuff. It's powerful work. Yeah, I feel like I always, we know we didn't really talk about homes that heal. You and I, obviously you live in a gorgeous home and you've surrounded yourself. We talk about creating a space and environment. I fortunately was able to experience this in my home, as do most people, because you're in your comfort environment. This is why it's so important to create a space of peace and loving, supported energy in and around your home. Because if you want to do work like this, you can't really do it in the clutter and the chaos.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've teed that up for you. So tell me what Homes That Heal means to you, I guess, and why these two things just kind of button up together.
Yeah. So for me, a home that heals is a place where you can actually show up as your most authentic self, where you can shed these outside layers, where you can feel safe and grounded, and you can give yourself access to your own internal vulnerability to allow yourself to do the inner work, to go inside and vulnerably look at yourself. And you can't do that in an environment that is stressful or unsupported. It needs to be a place that is clean and warm and inviting, and you're paying attention to the energy of the environment. Because in order to be able to go in and to do the healing and to work on nutrition and detox and energy, you have to feel good in your space. And so your space needs to be a place where you're able to foster peace and joy and safety. Because for many of us, those weren't things that were fostered in our earlier life. But it's never too late to rewrite your childhood. It's never too late for you to have a happy childhood. It's never too late to create these things for yourselves. Just because this stuff was written before doesn't mean that you have to continue on those patterns. And so creating a home that is a healing space for you to access the vulnerability, and it's all of the things. It's like, do you have the tools available to you? Do you have, your essential oils and your Epsom salts and your sauna, all of the things that are going to be able to help you so to support you in that, but it's also
Mhm.
the people in your home or maybe the pets in your home. It's the
Mhm.
clutter, it's all of those things. So really taking a look, and that's what I love about this podcast is that we're really looking at all of the different areas that create a home environment that helps you on your healing path to be your highest, most authentic self.
Oh, yeah. I could revel in that conversation all day long, obviously, but I mean, you teed it up and you said it so beautifully. And that is why I am so passionate about this work. It's why I'm so passionate about helping people create the space. I mean, we did my session. I was sitting in my office, sitting in the chair that I'm sitting right now, because I'm completely surrounded by everything that feels
Mhm.
good to me. I've got my crystals. I have everything in and around me all day, particularly in my office space, because I spend a ton of time in here. I feel super supportive. I've got selenite sitting right here. I've got my quartz crystal, and I remember kind of positioning a couple specific pieces around me that day that I knew would be supportive energies for me. And so this is the work. This is what I feel so passionate about, and why having a place of peace and safety in your home is so important, so that you can do whatever it is that you want to do and feel that expansion and feel supported in it. So thank you so much, Carrie. Holy cats. This is definitely going to continue this conversation. I would love for you to share with the listeners where they can find you and your beautiful work, and how they can connect with you.
Thank you. I love that. And my company is Love of My Life Energetics. And so my website is lmlenergetics.com. There you can kind of look at my history, like what is RTT. You can see the different services and the programs that I offer. And I'm going to be launching a weight release program, which is actually called Release. It's a big program for a healthier, more authentic you. And I'm partnering with just an amazing woman. Her name is Dr. Stacy Bean. She's a functional medicine specialist, so that we really can cover the mind body connection and the root cause reasons for why people are having a hard time letting go of the weight that they so want to shed, because it's not just the weight is just a symptom of the other things that are going on in their life. So what are those things? How do we release them? And that's what this program is all about. So super excited about that.
I love it. And I met Dr. Stacy at a recent event that we were at together too. And she's amazing. So I have no doubt you ladies put together a powerhouse combination of work and a fantastic program. So thank you so much. I literally can't put into words how grateful I am for you and our friendship and this experience. Obviously, I'm going to continue to do this work because it's shown me to be beneficial, but I just really appreciate you and our friendship. So thank
Oh,
you. Okay, friends and fellow wellness warriors, thanks for tuning in today. If this show was helpful and inspired you, please head over to Apple or Spotify to rate, review, subscribe, and follow us, as well as share it with your friends and family. It's a fantastic way to grow the show, expand my reach, and teach others how to create a vibrant life they love. If you're ready to invest in your health and purchase a Clear Light Sauna, hop on over to jenhellerlifestyle.com and send me a note. Thanks again for tuning in. I love you. I'm grateful for you, and I thank you so much for your support. You are the reason I do this work. You are the reason I do this show, and you are the reason I get up every single day with a burning desire in my soul. Cheers to your health and happiness, my friends. We'll see you next week. This podcast is for general information purposes only and is not intended to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.